Charles, I really appreciate your patience with the technical failure we suffered the other day, but we are back and so much has been going on. How you doing, Charles?
Oh, it's great to be back, Jason. And this is not a simple thing that we're doing, especially when we're not in the same place and there's lots going on. And you do a great job. And so just don't worry about it.
Thank you very much. It's also not a simple thing to be the dumbest man in the world to ever hold the office of the President of the United States. And he just keeps getting dumber. It's interesting if we weren't in this, kind of crucible of destruction wrought by Dumb Joe. And I think it's important that we talk about Dumb Joe's Garage today, Charles. Have you ever watched the Jay Leno's Garage show?
Yeah, I really have watched it quite a bit. And I have to say, it's nice to see somebody enjoy a hobby as much as Jay Leno does. I mean, he just is, you could tell, he just loves cars.
Oh, yeah.
He should probably actually pay for the privilege of doing that show. I'm kidding, of course, but he loves cars, and I think the formula is pretty good in driving around with interesting people other than Dumb Joe,
Yeah.
and then bringing in that car expert who really does seem. I mean, he convinces me that he's an expert. Maybe he isn't, but the guy with the snappy dresser with the funny eyeglasses who comes in and literally is an encyclopedic expert on the auto industry. And they go through a song and dance about which car is the more valuable and why and all that.
Yeah.
But
Sorry. He's a lot of great experts on there, and I like it better than his talk show. I agree with you. It's very authentic enthusiasm that he has. I used to see him driving around Burbank in all kinds of crazy. He's got one like water-powered car, steam-powered car, and all kinds of alcohol-powered car. You just see him driving around in these crazy cars.
Yeah. Well, and Joe Biden's obviously got a bullshit-powered car. Before we get too deeply into the garage, I think it's important for the viewers to purchase this book, which I couldn't show you last time. It's called Presidential Archivist.
Uh-huh.
And in an encyclopedic fashion, this book, done by a man who is now dead, with a lot of footnotes, explains the process in some detail. And it's not as if, on January 19th, the day before a president leaves the office for the final day, somebody says, you know what? There's some presidential records we better store somewhere. Maybe we ought to get on top of them. I mean, the process begins, in some cases, years before a president departs. And what happens is they appoint a working group at the National Archives to begin the process of scrubbing all the records and to try to figure out, what are actually presidential records and what are personal records. And the question of whether they're presidential or personal, and in this case, vice presidential or personal, is laid out, first of all, in statutes, but also their regulations, there may be court decisions, etc. So the place to start with this knucklehead who is pretending that he's mentally competent and pretending that he's actually running the administration and has been running the administration since January 20th, 2021, is in the National Archives itself. And as this book explains in copious detail, the process of evaluating presidential records involves a lot of transmissions back and forth, and there are records and logs of if the records were picked up physically, then there's a record of who picked them up, when they picked them up, where the records were transported, where they were kept. And you don't just like sit there and say, well, I like this bust of George Washington, I think I'll take that home. That chandelier would look good in the family room, I'll take that. This is just preposterous that Joe Biden would have had these presidential records, not for, a week. He's had these records since January 20th, 2017. And somebody has had these records. And the question is exactly who has had these records. And it's really the records of the Obama administration, not Biden, but the records of the Obama administration. And so, by this act of gleefully leaking somehow that, well, we may have found some records, you have now, I think, legitimately uncorked the need for a new investigation, not of Biden alone,
Yeah.
but of the entire Obama administration, and arguably the Bush administration, the Clinton administration, going all the way back. What has happened in this time frame, broadly speaking, a lot of stuff has happened. One thing that has happened is that these records have become enormously valuable. And presidents have been able, and vice knuckleheads and secretaries of state, bigger knuckleheads, and others are able to monetize these records in the form of books, speeches, honoraria, board, the chance to get involved in business deals, etc. So where before public servants, really before Reagan, wouldn't as actively seek to monetize their supposed public service, from Reagan onwards, that's all these presidents seem to do. And there's a lot of people that, well, first of all, the value of a cabinet level position has escalated enormously. We see that. You become a cabinet secretary, even, dunce, asshole pothole, Pete Buttigieg will probably get another book deal. I mean, but here's Biden. I think thrown to the wolves. I think that people have made a decision that Joe Biden has outlived his usefulness to the Democratic Party. And since you and I last spoke by telephone, I went and looked, and you have to look at the 22nd Amendment, Section 1. And I believe you could read that amendment to argue that Kamala Harris, after the 21st of January, so a week from yesterday, could be installed, could become the acting president, serve 2 years, and then serve 2 terms. So she could be in there for.
I agree, Charles. And not only Kamala Harris, the way this, well, why don't we read this so that people can understand what you're getting at? Here it is. It says, Section 1, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of the president more than once. So I agree with your interpretation of this. Not only Kamala Harris, but any person who becomes appointed or through, vice presidential ascension after the 21st of January, 2023, who holds that office, like, in other words, if they decide, okay, Joe Biden is stepping down and appointing Michelle Obama vice president and Kamala Harris becomes president, and then perhaps the next day Kamala Harris slips on a banana peel and we never see her again, Michelle Obama could serve 364 days plus a year and then get elected twice to 2 terms and be a 10-year president.
Well, let's start with Kamala. I think with Kamala, it's crystal clear that she could serve that rump or chump period and then rig 2 elections and stay in office for 10 years. I think the rub on any other person replacing Kamala is that other person would have to be confirmed. I believe I don't have it in front of me, but I believe you have to be confirmed in the House and the Senate. If you we could check Gerald Ford, but I think when somebody is appointed to be vice president, that person has to be confirmed. I'm pretty sure, and I do not believe.
We have it here. This is 1973 United States vice presidential confirmation. On October 10th, 1973. Vice President Spiro Agnew, a Republican, was forced to resign following a controversy over his personal taxes. Interesting. Under the terms of the 25th Amendment, a vice presidential vacancy is filled when the president nominates a candidate who is confirmed by both houses of Congress. Interesting.
And there is no way that Michelle Obama or Hillary Clinton will be confirmed as vice president, knowing in the House, knowing that she would then become president. There's no freaking way. So Um, I don't know who they could get through in the event that they went down this path, but it could be that somebody believed that it was time to really put the nation through the mess that we are now in, because the argument for Joe was a lot like the argument for Dick Cheney and George W. Bush. Don't worry about George W. Bush and his obvious rough edges. We've got a seasoned Washington hand and Dick Cheney who really knows how to shoot people on a hunting trip, blow up countries, and raise a crooked daughter to pretend that she's a Republican when secretly doing the bidding of the Democratic and progressive wing. So this argument of we need an old trusted Washington, D.C. hand to somehow be involved with the presidential administration of somebody who's obviously mentally incompetent like Joe Biden. I mean, it's just a ridiculous argument. And when we get into as well I need to watch my language, but I just assume I'm dropping a bunch of F-bombs. But when you watch, when you watch this, what passes for the mainstream media, make comments the way they have been making them. I like Bret Baier. I think he's got a poignant personal story with his family and his kids and stuff like that. And he does very consistently good work. But from time to time, he makes mistakes. And one of them he made last week when he was talking about, the trying to compare Trump and Biden on these records. Now, in the first instance, the records administration of the way in which presidential records, vice presidential records may have been handled by Trump, I think we will see is radically different than the way it was under Obama. That's a correct comparison. So the issue, as you know, the first animation that you did with me anyway on Hillary Clinton's records,
yeah,
the biggest question I have, the biggest indictment of Barack Obama, frankly, is that he allowed his Secretary of State, a rapacious criminal, not even mastermind, I don't know, I suppose we can't use master, what's the opposite of slave mind, to conduct 100% of the operation of the State Department over unsecure servers and electronic devices, while the husband of the Secretary of State was and continues to operate with his daughter a massive criminal conspiracy, melding supposed charitable activities with corruption across the planet, and if it's possible, in the universe itself. I mean, every facet of this Clinton Foundation is a fraud, as we've documented in podcast after podcast. Nobody in the Justice Department has the guts or the honor to do the right thing and make an example of this Clinton Foundation. It is clear that people at the time, before Hillary was confirmed, as she should not have been in the Senate, it was clear that people understood in 2008 and early 2009 that there was a massive set of issues here. We know that state governments had investigated. We know later that the IRS and the FBI and the Justice Department have in the past looked at the Clinton Foundation and I guess decided that it's too much of a mess. It indicts people in both parties to actually clean up the mess. And in so doing, it's an indictment of our own justice system going way back, going all the way back to 97, its very birth on October 23rd, 1997. So, the fact that Barack Obama and the people close to him, whoever actually was making the tough, whoever was his chief operating officer, in essence, in that administration, decided to let this thing go. And just, okay, Bill, you do what you want. We're not going to touch it. And in the years under the Obama administration, the many Clinton charities expanded gigantically under Barack Obama's nose, monetizing presidential records, allowing foreign governments to curry favor with the Obama administration and with Hillary, somebody they thought might be a future president. So you send small money to Clinton projects, small money to Obama projects, small money to Biden projects. Now you've got a template. And Bush projects, you've got a template. And that means that future presidents, Trump was tagged for his operation of two charities, or one charity, I guess, by the state government and in New York State, and by the Justice Department over comparatively paltry sums of his own money, principally. And yet you let the Clintons go from being bankrupt when Bill was in the White House to now being worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That paves the way for Hunter to send the email, which was disclosed last week. An email goes back and forth to somebody saying, listen, we're going to operate this Penn Biden Center just like the Clinton Global Initiative, only we don't have to make any donations. It'll only be about building wealth. They had that email. The Justice Department has had that email for years, right? And before the 2020 election. So if it wasn't crystal clear to the audience before that the abuse of discretion in the IRS and the Justice Department to favor swamp rats in Washington, D.C., and to punish the small people across this country is so egregious. That's the inequality that has to be eliminated. You can't have a system that under Trump, actually now under Biden, there was a recent report that the people under Biden in the IRS who have been targeted for audits are the poor, because the poor can't afford the accountants and the lawyers.
Yeah.
And they're trying to make the statistics look good, that if you get audited, you're going to have to cough up. So they, on purpose, target the vulnerable. Where are the progressives on this? If you want to get, as we've said time and again, if you want to get the budget deficit eliminated, if you want to stop this corruption in Washington, D.C., you target legacy charities. You target the charities, particularly presidential charities, charities of dynastic political families, the McCains, the Bushes, the Kerrys, the Bidens, the Clintons, the Obamas, all of these charities, the educational institutions that are trying to get federal grants for their medical schools, for their various operations, for their research operations, these brand name, egregiously expensive educational institutions that no one seems to be able to discipline. You go after them and the Rockefeller Foundation, the Gates Foundation, whatever, you will see a very rapid change in behavior in the swamp and culture in the swamp. And then you need to take people like Bill Gates, who's a serial charity fraudster, serial corrupter, serial monopolist, serial villain, and put his fucking ass in jail for the rest of time.
Yeah.
Once he gets a trial.
Yes, due process, of course. Now, Charles, when we discuss the transmission of presidential files, I think it's critical that we learn if Joe has the 3-speed or the 4-speed, because he's got this vehicle loaded up with files, and he's ready to burn the tires on his way out of the garage. I want to talk just for a second some more about this Penn Biden Center, because it's something that we haven't paid enough attention to yet, and it's a good thing that it's getting the attention that it deserves right now. The full name of it, of course, is the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement. See, this caught my eye. Sometimes little things that slide under the radar for most people have a tendency to draw my attention, like this weird fish in the logo for, I guess, Penn, whatever that is. But the Global Engagement Center is something within the Department of State. And it tells us that the mission and vision is to direct, lead, synchronize, and integrate and coordinate U.S. federal government efforts to recognize, understand, expose, and counter foreign state and non-state propaganda and disinformation efforts aimed at undermining or influencing the policy, security, or stability of the United States, its allies, and partner nations. This is another one of these things where civilians can join this thing. I mean, this is like a precursor to the Disinformation Governance Board. So I just wonder what the true purpose of the Penn Biden Center for Global Engagement is. Obviously receiving money for Joe. I mean, it doesn't seem like they're trying to stop foreign influence.
Well,
They're trying to earn money from it.
well, again, let's take a step backwards, because I think, as in any magic trick, and I believe you know a lot more about magic than I do, but magic is you like to refer to it as stipulated reality.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, when you hear Penn Biden Center, and you can call it whatever else you want, and most people will instantly say, well, that's pretty impressive. Former, Washington, D.C. icon, or maybe fossil is a better way of describing it, barely alive fossil, and an Ivy League institution have created a center. Well, where's the legal paperwork on that? Charities are not supposed to be individuals. They're supposed to be organizations. So show me proof that this is an actual organization. Where are its bylaws? Where are its articles of incorporation? If it is under fiscal sponsorship of the University of Pennsylvania, that being in theory an educational charity, then show me that fiscal sponsorship agreement. Show me how you're going to regulate conflicts. Show me the diligence that Penn may have done on the Biden family before they allowed the Biden name to be attached to the University of Pennsylvania. It's almost like, it's the Penn Capone Center for tax
stealing money. Yeah.
For tax and alcohol distribution. I mean,
right.
It's ridiculous that you would, if you cared about the University of Pennsylvania, knowing the state of the Biden family when this institute sprang into being. This, after all, is when Joe Biden was doing his best to grift between leaving the vice presidential residence and going back to the White House on January 20th, 2021. This is a period when Joe was free to go and slap all these deals together with Hunter and Bob Alinsky and others. What business? Who at the University of Pennsylvania conducted legitimate diligence on the Biden family, especially including Hunter and James and other members of the family, who are just grifters? That's all they are.
Well, it's an adjunct to the Jeffrey Dahmer Culinary Institute. Right. So they're gonna
the Jeffrey Dahmer diet program.
Yeah.
You got, what's that, Nutrisystem? You got Dahmer system.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just it's preposterous. And so, where we are now, I think we're in a very interesting place, because the mainstream media has been caught flat-footed many different ways. The mainstream media is people who currently serve as editors, managing editors or whatever, in ABC, CBS, NBC, all of these firms need to be fired. Anybody who allowed the over many years, you go through the important air minutes, which I would argue are 6 to 7 p.m. in news, and then ask during the period 2015 to the present, how much airtime was devoted to the Russian hoax? How much airtime, the different supposed scandals of the Trump administration? Those decisions are made by the managing editors, and maybe by the CEOs of the stations. Every single person who allowed ABC, NBC, CBS, BBC, PBS, the different things that perpetrated this hoax needs to be fired. And whatever exit deal they thought they have, they need to be sued by the new owners of the media organizations, so that, yes, on the one hand, they'll get whatever benefits they're contractually entitled to, but then they need to be sued again. Because this was a ridiculous waste of precious time at a moment when the United States is reeling with too much debt, facing rising enemies who seem determined to test us. We've had to endure this smear campaign that harmed the Trump family, but more importantly, harmed Americans and harmed our allies. And it was knowingly perpetrated by a bunch of brigands who probably stood to gain some form of government money or government favor, so long as they perpetrated the hoax. Same goes for Facebook and Twitter and social media. And same goes for these book publishers. I mean, the idea that you would allow Barack Obama's whoever wrote Barack Obama's book to destroy the I key on his computer with the insipid bullshit books that you really, if his name were not Barack Obama, wouldn't get published, that don't really shed much insight at all into what was really going on during the 8 awful years when he was president. Pay that guy a couple $100 million for book and movie and Netflix deals. It's a disguised campaign contribution. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous.
Or
the
not
same
lie.
And the same is true. Not to pick on the Obamas alone. I do not give a shit what Laura Bush thinks about anything. I just don't. She wasn't elected president of the United States. You're a loyal wife. Great. You're interested in whatever you're interested in. Fantastic. You're not getting a book deal. It's just forget it. You're not getting a book deal. You're a public servant. You're the wife of a public servant. So maybe you're a good wife. Fantastic. No book deal. And you're not going on CBS 60 Minutes, and we don't care what you have to say. All right? You're supposed to help your husband. And similarly, when a woman becomes president, I don't give a shit what the husband has to say about anything.
But what if they have interesting? I mean, maybe it's possible somebody would have. What if Michelle Obama becomes president? People are going to want to listen to B-Rock all the time.
Well, that's part of the problem, right? We're not electing. People became concerned, rightfully so. We see why. When Franklin Roosevelt was in there for 4 terms, and for much of them, when he was not wholly physically able to conduct his duties, and when Eleanor was doing, a lot of work there, never having been elected, not being supervised by anybody. We don't want that. We have decided that this is too much, as a nation, too much power is placed in the hands of a president. So therefore, we don't want a president turning into a king. And that's what happens if you let one family in the White House for 16 years. Or now, in this case, it could be 18 years, if you're right about Michelle. That is not something we want. And in particular, when you go back to George Washington, all these people who like to, make fun of him because he owned slaves, or say he's morally repugnant today because he owned slaves then, get over yourselves. The slavery is rampant in the planet in 2023, worse so in Africa, following what Obama and Hillary and Kerry did on that continent during the Obama administration. Not just Libya, South Sudan, Mauritania, all over the African continent, there are slaves. There are people who are functionally equivalent to slaves across the planet now because of this unregulated globalism that has allowed tyrants to take hold over these resource-rich but infrastructure-poor countries and rape and pillage to their heart's content. But going back to Washington was people don't remember this history or study this history enough. The first attempt in the United States of America to operate independent from Britain failed under the Articles of Confederation. It was a disaster. It was a mess. And so the founders got together and crafted this Constitution, which, when somebody who slaughters the English language today, who, it's a miracle that they actually obtained their legal degrees, wants to give a lecture to anybody about why the Constitution is flawed. The Constitution was put together in a short period of time. It has stood the test of centuries. It is an incredibly elegant masterpiece, frankly, that I don't think any group of lawyers sitting around the table today, and mind you, the people who crafted the Constitution included lawyers, but many were not. It was unique. It is unique.
Yeah.
And it was a miracle that it came together. And so Washington, the hero of the Revolutionary War, was very happy on his plantation. His wife was extremely wealthy. And, he didn't necessarily care about wealth, he had done his service. He'd helped bring this country to life, and they offered him the chance to be king, and he turned it down. How many Washington, D.C.
Zero.
Bigwigs today would turn down the chance to become king? That's what Obama thinks he's going to be.
Yeah.
Right?
I think he thinks he already is.
Right. So Washington turns it down and leaves after 2 terms. I mean, think of that. You know, think of the kind of person this man was. No electricity, you know,
no teeth,
no internet, no teeth.
How did he do that?
No Listerine.
Yeah.
You know, and just think of it. And back then, the concept was not that there be a permanent operation in the capital of the country, right? That people were part-time government people and full-time taking care of their farms and their operations. You know, we need to go back to that. We don't need this permanent bureaucracy. And frankly, as I think about the decades I've spent watching the messes in Washington, D.C., we need to turn Washington, D.C. into a Disneyland of history. You know, you go there, it'll be really interesting. You'll let people will, you'll set it up so you'll sell tickets for the right to, you know, sit in the White House, in the Oval Office for 10 minutes. That'll cost $1,000, or pick a number. You can, no pornographic stuff, but you can have pictures taken, a limited number of people. You get a tour, you walk around, you see where Lincoln slept. You go into Congress, you go here, you go there. Then we need to break this massive mess up and have, you know, one cabinet department in Denver, you know, one over here, and as Warren Buffett does, as an example, Warren Buffett runs a gigantic pile of businesses from Omaha, Nebraska, with like 20 people. Don't tell me that Pete asshole pothole Buttigieg needs a gigantic department, you know, to wreak the destruction that idiot has wrought on this country since he pretended he was biking in on his first day of office. Think of it. He's destroyed the supply chain.
Yeah.
He's destroyed the air transportation business. He's destroyed ports. He's on the road to destroying roads. The guy is a moron. He's an insufferable moron buffoon, right? If he wants to go be president of Yale University, let the trustees put him there. But get him the fuck out of government. He's a moron. And it has nothing to do with his sexual identity. Nothing. He is just, whether he was straight, gay, or interested in plants, he's a moron.
He's a botanist. That's the problem.
He's an insufferable moron, you know, who would not be allowed inside the boardroom making important decisions at a medium-sized publicly traded company, let alone something as big as the Secretary of Transportation. So we need to think through it, just as you have done with Crowdsource the Truth. If you were doing what we do the old-fashioned way, you'd probably employ 10 times the number of people, and it would be a lot more expensive. And that's basically what's going on in government. There's no, you know, they don't sit around saying, you know, how do we reduce our power?
Well, how do we increase our efficiency and reduce our footprint? That's what they should be thinking.
They don't think like that at all. They're trying to get, you know, a permanent gig where money goes into an account, and all they do is get on private planes and, you know, and congratulate themselves, and give awards, you know, and preen around. Aren't I noble for the service that I've given you today, destroying the Port of Los Angeles? Yes, you are, Pete. You know, how's Jason doing? And this idea, you know, look, people, we all get sick, and we're all going to check out one day. And so at moments in our lives, there are going to be medical emergencies, and I feel for people who are going through them. But that doesn't, the second you get, you know, you destroy the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach as your opening move, you know, while you're home on paternity leave, right? And yes, one of your children was on a ventilator for a period. I'm sorry for that.
I didn't know that.
Okay. Well, this Jessica Tarloff brings it up every time on the 5. you make an issue of asshole pothole. And, I happen to know somebody who was the deputy transportation secretary. That's the person who actually is the chief operating officer. Pete is a ceremonial job. I mean, he's supposed to have a strong number two in there. And so he's not overseeing, he's got a weak number two, and he's not overseeing that person properly. And he has no talent, no fucking talent. I bet you he's not even a good driver, which is what he was in
right,
Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan, yeah.
Right. I bet you he's probably like, well, he's looking for potholes. I know how to break this. I know how to get a flat tire. We'll just go over this trench. Hey, Pete, there could be like a bomb in that. Don't worry about it. Boom. And the guy's, he's like Mr. Magoo, the young version of Mr. Magoo.
Extremely unimpressive.
Right. And look at the crack on crack talent that Joe Biden has in his administration. One person is dumber than the next. Janet Yellen. Inflation is moderating. What the fuck are you talking about? First she said it was transitory.
Now she says it's moderate. There was this article that you had sent me from Clarice Feldman about the Corvette files.
Yeah, she's very, very good.
Internet posters are making hay of the news that Joe Biden had classified documents obtained when he was vice president. Look, can we talk a bit about how these documents were found? We had a show yesterday with Lee Stranahan, High Dive, and I don't always agree with everything that every guest says when they come on the show. Lee felt that there was, no reason to look further into how these documents were discovered, that this is a gift to, people who don't want Joe Biden. But I disagree. I think it is very important because, first of all, they say, oh, Joe Biden's lawyer found this. But it's funny when you hire lawyers and you think they're working for you, and then the outcome might cause you to wonder if they might have loyalties to somebody else. Because Bob Bauer, the guy who found these things in the garage, first of all, what the hell is your lawyer doing in your garage? Second of all, that's Barack Obama's lawyer, isn't it? What can we say about Bob Bauer and the finding of these documents?
Well, this is like, you don't go down a track. It's generally a bad idea to lie at all. But if you're going to lie to yourself walking into the wilderness in Alaska, maybe you'll get away with that. But if you're going to lie to the White House press corps, or, you're going to hire a liar, Karine Jean-Pierre, a incompetent moron, to be your press secretary and lie, you don't really want to do that in a White House press briefing before a bunch of people who have treated until now Joe Biden with kid gloves, right? The series of mistakes. Just if Donald Trump had left $85 billion worth of shit in Afghanistan, he would have been out of office in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
Impeached for sure.
He probably would have resigned, if he had made such a grievous misstep.
He would never do it. He would never do it.
Right. I'm just saying.
It'd be like you investing $1 million in Bitcoin right now. It'd be like, wait a minute, what did you do with Charles?
No,
it wouldn't happen.
Well, although Bitcoin has gone up a fair amount last week.
But just, do I have this wrong? Did Bob Bauer find the documents, or is it just that dumb Joe has hired him now?
No, I'm going to get to that in a second. The most absurd thing that has been admitted in the last 24 hours is that the lawyers who went through the documents did not have the security clearances required to read the documents.
Great.
Right? Well, no, that's preposterous.
Yeah.
That is not the way the process works. You can read, again, buy this book or take it out of the library and read it. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's just not the way the process works. Of course, the people screening the documents to determine whether they're classified or presidential records or personal records had those clearances, right? What the real story here is the documents, and we go back to that great animation you did in Chappaqua, the notion that Hillary Clinton would have all of her State Department business would be conducted in a manner where classified materials at the highest classification might have been stored outside a SCIF in Chappaqua and in Washington, D.C., where multiple supplicants for favor from the U.S. government and from the Clintons and from, for personal and government favors, shall we say, are traipsing through this house. Yes, they have Secret Service protection, but, you've got somebody, let's say some crook from Kazakhstan comes to see Bill in Chappaqua, and there are all these records about the State Department and what they're thinking about doing in Kazakhstan over here on the dining table.
Yeah.
And this guy really needs to see those records, and he's prepared to give you $100 million via Uranium One. And you say, okay, well, come on up to Chappaqua. We'll have a barbecue, and you might want to take a look at my my glass collection over here.
Yeah.
And anything that's in this room you could read so long as you're here. Just you can't make any copies.
Yeah, or take the Corvette for a spin if you want. It's just in the garage. The door is wide open. It's not out in the street.
Right. So either these are classified materials that are important to Biden for one reason or another, or they shouldn't have been classified. So my guess is they're highly important. They're incriminating, and that brings me back to where I started. What was Barack Obama doing with Valerie Jarrett and Michelle Obama when the three of them were living in the Obama's house in Washington, D.C., beginning in 2017? What were they doing? Where are the presidential records of Barack Obama? How can it be that the Obama Presidential Library was originally set up to store physical records, and then as I and others began to make a point that you didn't, like the Clinton Foundation, you didn't listen to us. The bylaws and the Articles of Incorporation are absurd. They're defective. They're as defective as Michelle's Princeton thesis is, and they can't be fixed. Which is why I recommended to the person who was the general counsel of the Obama Presidential Library, said, look, it's a $10 million error at most to give the money back for the way this has been set up in the beginning, which is defective. Just, eat the 10 million, start over, do it right. This man's an important historic figure.
Charles,
he deserves a library.
Wasn't this woman involved somehow in the document discovery? So this is the lawyer that you're talking about, right? Dana Remus. And she's at Covington and Burling, which is, Eric Holder. This is like an Obama lawfare situation.
Right.
But wasn't she involved with the document discovery at Joe Biden's place?
She may well have been. She may well have been. She was general counsel to the Obama Presidential Library. Then she became general counsel to the Biden campaign, and then she became White House counsel, and then she left recently to go over to Covington and Burling, as you so rightly point out, and to be a partner with Eric Holder. Now,
let's take a look at this real quick. Sorry, this is from CBS News. The Penn Biden Center and the University of Pennsylvania did not respond to a request for comment. The National Archives declined to comment. Attorneys assigned to oversee Biden's vice presidential records, Robert Leonard, James Garland, not the actor, and Dana Remus, did not reply to voicemail messages or email seeking comment.
Right. And so this gets back, to what, there's in this sort of a true life story here, true life documentary. In a whole bunch of scandals, the same people always seem to come to light. Well, let's start with Bob Bauer. Okay. Bob Bauer needs to explain why he resigned very suddenly, the very day that the lawyers returned from Hawaii with an electronic copy, an electronic version of Barack Obama's birth certificate. He needs to explain why he suddenly resigned. He resigned within minutes of viewing that thing. And there needs to be, if this were a question about Donald Trump's birth certificate, you could be sure that there would be, a
People
whole bunch of
Yeah.
Well, a whole bunch. You know how all these investigators, many of them have goatees and they dress funny or whatever. You have a whole bunch of these experts, who know that this is this type of paper and this type of parchment and this type of typewriter.
Yeah.
They would go through it, but I'm no expert, but I have flown. I've been to Hawaii. It's a long trip, and when you send a partner to Hawaii and back, you're paying that rate for the whole trip. They're sitting in the plane watching movies or whatever. You're paying 10 hours of partner time, or 12, or however long it takes to get out to Hawaii, the time while they're there, the time coming back. And they didn't need to go there if they're getting an electronic version of the birth certificate. There's no point in going there. Barack Obama's book says that it was his idea to send the lawyers over there, and that he had directed them to go onto the shelf in the archive and make a physical copy of his birth certificate. That's what he says. That is not what happened. Okay?
Charles, can you see this image I'm showing right now? This is...
I can't.
Well, okay, so just to describe it, this is the only version of the Barack Obama birth certificate that's been seen by the public. And even here on our broadcast, recompressed through transmission to YouTube, and I've got a 7-speed transmission, so Joe Biden can go screw himself. But you can see here, it says August 8th, 1961, and the 196 in 1961 are clearly red, and the one is black. Now, this is ostensibly a scan of something that would have been stamped with a rubber stamper on August 8th, 1961. And I remember from my elementary school days what those rubber stampers were like. You roll a band of numbers to set the date, you bang that thing on a ink pad, and then you stamp it on the page. There is no practical, physical way that a single digit on a stamper like that could be a different color than the rest of it. And that is just one very obvious example of obvious problems with this document. So I have never said anything about where Barack Obama was born. I have no information with that. My only comment is on this digital document, which shows many, many signs of alteration. And people often say, oh, this is Photoshop, that is Photoshop. One of the things that we can see here, and one of the things that would be used to determine if something is or is not altered, and I don't know if this subtlety could come through, but I'm seeing a lot more digital noise around these signatures than I am around other elements of the document, and that is an indication that there is something going on with this document that is not normal. Even this letter D, compared to the rest of the, Dunham, it just looks weird, Charles.
Right. Again, the whole birth certificate analysis and the implications of that, we can park for a second. But Bauer was in there, White House counsel. Something caused him to say, oh, shit, I'm out of here that day. And it's very unusual for somebody to just up and to be in that job. White House counsel is a big job. You should know the deepest, darkest secrets of the president. You've got to know those. Otherwise, how are you going to protect it? Right? So you got to assume that Bauer saw something he didn't like and said, I can't do this anymore, and I'm out. Then we turn to his wife, Anita Dunn, an odious bitch and traitor, right? Really. She idolized Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong was a demon, right? If you're an American, if you're working with Chinese Americans, many of the people who made it into this country and are so successful from China, in the period when Mao was coming to light, to power, fled Mao. Okay? To idolize Mao. How did that bitch get a security clearance? Right? So she was in the Obama administration. People made an issue of the comments, and fairly made an issue. So she had to leave the Obama administration. She has served in the Biden administration as the equivalent of Valerie Jarrett, the person who was basically making the key decisions for Obama and making sure that the Obama administration pretended to run on time. That's Anita Dunn. Okay? And now you got Bob Bauer back in the mix here. What are they trying to cover up? Might it be that Anita Dunn was very happy with the Biden Chinese program? Might she have been the architect of the Biden Chinese program, i.e., kowtow to China in exchange for getting some billions of dollars under the control, in theory, the nominal control of Hunter Biden? Might she have been the architect of this plan? Right? And who in the FBI and CIA, are they can't be asleep at the switch. Somebody had to know, had to have concerns about this arrangement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody had to notice this, and if they didn't notice this, then we tear down the CIA, tear down the FBI, and start over. Okay?
Justin Trudeau's father is also a huge fan of Mao. They hung out in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's as crazy, frankly. Mao may not have killed, I don't know how many Jewish people there were in China, but Mao
Probably
killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Tens of millions of people, right? He likely killed more people than Hitler.
Why did he want to do that?
It's not like it's a homogenous country. There are people who opposed him. You've heard of Taiwan.
Yeah.
I'm just
So
kidding.
he's just oppressive dictator.
Yeah. I mean, the long march, the re-education camps, killing your enemies, kill the intellectuals. I mean, you go through this, man, this is a bloodthirsty dictator.
By the way, Charles, back on Bob Bauer for a second. I meant to tell you this. Maybe you know. He's on faculty at NYU Law School, which is a place that at one time I naively contemplated perhaps attending. It is a hive for Clinton, sycophants, and NYU is kind of a piece of shit to begin with.
Right, and it used to be that the legal profession was at one time semi-honorable.
Yeah.
I think what's happened is that swamp rats like Barr and the many other swamp rats in the Republican and Democratic parties understand that being a law partner is kind of great, particularly if you're plugged in with the Justice Department. You're never going to be prosecuted either by the Justice Department or in league with the IRS. And you then go down the project of saying, look, we want to get into the business of global engagement. America needs to engage with the world, which was really code for saying, you know what? We're going to create a world where nobody can touch us. There's no global Justice Department. There's no global IRS, and there never will be. And so what we're going to do is we're going to move into a new stipulated reality where the laws of the United States of America are one set of laws. They don't really matter because I'm a charity and I operate in 200 countries or 100 countries or 50 countries. Who is to say that the law of Nigeria matters more or less than the law of the United States of America? Yes, I'm going to break a few laws here and there. Nobody can comply with all these conflicting laws. So just stop wasting my time. I'm very busy moving the rotation of the Earth a bit so that global warming will not be a problem, or the global cooling won't be, so that the comet will miss us. I'm too busy doing that to comply with these little laws over here. And by the way, don't ask me how I have $1 billion when I started with $200,000 of student loans and never had a job in my life. Just don't ask me those kind of questions. I'm too busy helping you. And you're too dumb to understand why I'm helping you. You'll never understand it. I'm just leave me alone, shut up and go away. That's what these people do. And it just needs to stop. And to get to the bottom of this kind of behavior, for Joe Biden to get up there and to say, as a lawyer, remember at one point he said he was at the top of every class he ever went to, every school he ever went to, and he's a dunce. He's a complete dunce. But he gets up there. Remember he called Peter Doocy a dumbass.
Yep. Dumb son of a bitch.
Dumb son of a bitch. And he's up there saying, yes, I know I'm a lawyer, but I would now like to confess to the felony crime of knowingly storing classified information in an unsecure location. I want to confess to that crime right now, but everybody does it. And, let's just I've got to get back and polish the hood of my Corvette. Okay?
Well, but Wasn't it interesting, Charles, how he made a point even after telling him that the thing was in the lock garage. He said, and so is my Corvette. He's so fixated on this Corvette. It's almost like, I've recently had the experience of speaking to somebody coming off of anesthesia, and you just sort of, your mind connects to bizarre things. And that's the Corvette to me. Why the hell is he trying to reestablish with Peter Doocy that the Corvette is safe? And if the Corvette is safe, so are the documents. It's ridiculous.
Right. And so, so that brings me actually to a related, seemingly unrelated, but I'm going to make the connection for everybody, story that was buried by the mainstream media. Tara Reade, who is a Democrat, who was on the Biden staff when he was senator, has credibly made allegations of serious sexual assault by Joe Biden when he was senator. And worse than the assault itself was the way she was treated afterwards, the retaliatory. She spoke up and they retaliated. She writes a book. It was supposed to be published before the 2020 election. Magically, it wasn't. Okay? Where are all the Me Too people on Tara Reade?
Yeah.
Where are all these people on the left who went batshit crazier on Brett Kavanaugh? Where are they on Tara Reade? Okay? Where are the people in Hollywood? How come she doesn't have a movie deal? Right? Yeah. And this Biden is Exhibit A in the protection racket the people in the FBI and the DOJ and the IRS run for convenient buffoons who are put into offices where they think they're running things, but in reality, it's the swamp running things. I mean, you think about Joe Biden. He announced his campaign, I believe, in April of 2019. I think that's about when he did. And he was, asshole pothole won the Iowa primary. Not Biden, asshole pothole. Think of that. People of Iowa, the good people of Iowa, thought that asshole pothole was better than Biden. And in the debate, and maybe he is actually better than
I don't know about
so far. Well, so far, asshole pothole doesn't have any classified materials in his townhouse or wherever he lives yet that we know of. But he's probably getting some. Well, they probably don't trust him with any secrets. I mean, he's too busy trying to decide which roads are racist.
Charles, isn't it also true that the more these things happen, like, Hillary Clinton says, oh, well, I didn't, Comey says she didn't mean to do it, it's okay. Doesn't this send a signal to basically everyone that, this classified stuff, it's a little bit fungible, it's not that big a deal if you have it on a server or if you store it in the Corvette, just, it's fine.
Well, good point that you bring up there. That you have the Hunter Biden investigation. I have had so far, and I hope it will be the only one interaction with the FBI.
Doesn't get better, trust me.
2 agents. And I've had a very good interaction with a senior agent who retired. I was very impressed with, but he retired probably because he was sick of the bullshit.
Yeah.
And not impressed in the slightest. And, now we find out, with all these screaming warning signs, Anita Dunn, how did she get a security clearance in the Biden administration? What's she actually doing? Now we find out that there's a woman last name Chung, who I think is Asian, who was very much involved with Hunter going back as far as 2010 or 12. And she provides the personal cell phone information of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and a whole bunch of Biden administration people to Hunter Biden. Why does Hunter Biden need Bill Clinton's cell phone? Now, what can you do if you're a state actor or a crooked non-state actor once you know the cell phone of a very important number, the number that the person actually uses and may use, if it's a smartphone, also for internet and texting, what sort of power might you be able to exercise once you have that cell phone? If you're a sophisticated military hacking organization.
Oh, actually, MBS is purported to have hacked Jeff Bezos' phone just by sending him a text. And I would bet
Right.
Hunter Biden is the plug. Bill Clinton's like, yo, Hunt, I need a bump. Call him up, send somebody over.
Right. Right. So, I mean, what is going on here? There must be within the FBI, within the CIA, and the 17 security agencies that we know about, there must be at least one person who is trying to make sure that stumblebum Biden, doesn't just give away all of our national secrets. And it's going back to the classification. I'm guessing that, and I don't know, and I don't want to know, actually, I'm just guessing that there are levels of security clearance, classification that go up to, quote, the highest level, and that there actually may be levels that are even higher than that. In other words, here's a secret that would really cause me to go to jail for the rest of my life because I've been breaking the law, Chris Wray, for most of my life in government. And so we better have a bucket up here that only the people who've been breaking the law can know about, because we all go down together if anyone rats any one of us. And those kind of things where we are breaking the law, we can't let the president know that. We can't let his political operative know that. And I think that's the zone we're in now. The various, you think of Christopher Wray, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the Enron task force. Now think about Enron for a second. What's the real story on Enron? Enron was a slush bucket of doing all these crooked deals around the world. The Bush family were involved in some of those deals. The Bush political campaign got a lot of money from Enron and Enron executives and Enron partners, as did the Clinton campaign. Right? So that's an example of a mess that, if the true extent of the mess was known, would implicate the Bush family and the Clinton family. And therefore, people went to jail and fines were paid. And Ken Lake, some argue, committed suicide, but he certainly died young.
Yeah. No, well, I thought he had a heart attack in his car, or that was somebody else had a heart attack in the car.
Somebody else. No, Lay stopped taking his medication and died early.
Oh.
But is the allegation. But the true extent of the mess of Enron, the degree to which a fucked up company with an absurd, we used to keep at the firm that last firm I set up, the last investment firm that I set up, or investment bank anyway, investment advisory firm. We used to keep in the boardroom a Goldman Sachs research report rating Enron a stunning buy, must buy, must hold equity shortly before it went bankrupt, like days before it went bankrupt. Goldman issues this research report. I mean, the degree to which Wall Street, mainstream Wall Street, can chase fees but miss fraud, as in the case of GE and Enron. Well, Enron certainly, and I would argue GE as well, even today, is stunning. So who's on that Enron task force? Mueller, Wray. Those names sound familiar.
Robert
to you?
Hur. Wasn't Robert Hur on it as well?
Yes.
And also, Charles, almost nobody is talking about the fact that Robert Hur, no longer, but was with King and Spalding, which is Christopher Wray's law firm, where he was a partner and got all kinds of millions of dollars. I think we had a lot more scrutiny on these Washington, D.C. law firms that are just sort of tools of the Department of Justice and the swamp rats who occupy both.
Right, exactly. And so in this mess, you got Perkins Coie everywhere and Bob Bauer. You got Dana Remus. You've got Mueller and Wray. You've got Covington. You've got Lisa Monaco. When we start talking about the Clinton Foundation. And, these are people, they're not like George Washington, who are wealthy to begin with. Okay, these are people who could not become wealthy, other than by being monopolists and getting away with it like Gates, or bending the system, molding the system to stipulate a reality in which only they win and they can never lose because they control the levers of power. And we, the people, have put up with this shit. And the only people you need to blame for us being in this predicament is the person you see when you look in the mirror, because it's me and it's you and it's everybody else who allowed the goons who controlled social media and control mainstream media to say, even though you have legitimate questions about the way in which the 2012 election was conducted, when the truth about Benghazi was not made known to the American people, and so Obama got reelected, when the truth about the Clinton Foundation was not made known to the American people, and Hillary Clinton was allowed to assemble her war chest to try to win in 2016 and to be the candidate in 2016. When the truth about the 2016 election and the degree to which the FBI, the DOJ, the IRS maybe, and the Obama administration meddled in our election, across the Middle East in the Arab Spring, around the world in other people's elections and referenda, we tolerated all that. We know what he said. Now, wait a minute. We're running nobody big said, we're running these massive deficits. We have a huge government debt. Why do we care about, why are we causing a coup in Ukraine in 2014? And who was president of the United States then? Barack Obama. Who was on point for Ukraine in 2014? Joe Biden. Okay. On what pretext was Trump impeached? A bad phone call to Ukraine. Who are the people who are involved in this Ukraine war today? Now, why are we sending $100 billion to Ukraine when, Eric Adams is now down, probably likes flying around in private jets. So he's down in El Paso. Kamala Harris never went there. He's down in El Paso at Eagle Pass trying to figure out how he can make a case for more billions of dollars to burn here in New York City. But at least he's down there, and he's the mayor of New York. He's not involved in the federal government in theory, but he cares to go down there. Joe probably forgot that he was down there, but he never really inspected what was going on. And Kamala Harris is too busy, planning her next trip to France to get more cooking pots for one of her many nice kitchens around the country. I mean, this is just a ridiculous mess that we're in. And one would hope that people have finally decided, and getting back to the classification, it does matter what kind of papers we're talking about here. It really does matter, because it's going to be, I think it's very easy to put somebody inside that main home where the Corvette is. I mean, Hunter Biden was living there. Don't tell me that a whole bunch of very sketchy people passed through that home. And don't tell me that, it wouldn't be possible, especially if the people knew where to look, for them to rummage through that garage or rummage through his personal library or somewhere else. And don't tell me that we really have not come close to knowing yet how many valuable classified documents were in the Obama homes while he was president and after he was president. Just don't even try to claim that isn't the case. And the real problem I think they face now with a Jim Jordan and with other people who are smart and aggressive and Comer have prosecutorial experience. Don't tell me that nobody in that group is going to say, no, wait a minute. We have the vice president, the president, and the secretary of state for 4 years. Obama, Biden, Clinton. There are serious questions about Hillary's mishandling of presidential records. And now serious questions about Biden. We've got to protect St. Obama, so people in the mainstream media just don't even want to go there. But I'll go there. The idea that you're going to set up a library to hold presidential records, and then when you get caught out in the various lies in the documents, you say, we never intended to do that. The National Archives are going to keep all those records. We're just going to make copies of them. We'll pay to copy them. You could trust us to store these records and make sure we would never.
Charles, we just lost your audio somehow.
You there?
Yeah, you're back. Wait, the audio stopped again.
Really?
No, now it's back. Now it's back.
Okay.
Just real quick before we move off of the garage, I don't know if you caught this detail in the Jay Leno episode with the Joe's Corvette, but he told Jay Leno that Hunter Biden had rebuilt the engine as a Christmas present surprise. And the thing that's so stupid about Joe, 2018 and 19, Hunter's driver's license was associated with his father's home. But this indicates that Hunter Biden has the ability to remove something as conspicuous as a Corvette from the garage, totally change out the engine, which is the biggest part of the thing, and Joe doesn't even know. So you're saying a couple of pieces of paper, he's aware that they're secure in the garage? It's just absurd.
Right. Well, yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not a skiff. A
Right.
skiff is a very serious piece of equipment that you could put into a sizable home or sizable office, but it's not a garage. It's much more secure, hence its name, than a garage, locked or not.
Yeah.
Now, but just if I could just finish that train of thought I was on, which is there's going to be there are many classified documents at the highest level for the period 2009 through 2013, when Hillary was Secretary of State, Joe was Vice President, and Barack Obama was President, where those three people's names are all on the document, right? Any foreign matter, really sensitive matter, say Ukraine, that that only the top team could know about, you're going to have an example of that memo that is going to be in the Obama library, in the Penn Center, and in the Clinton presidential, whatever Hillary gets for her, decides to have in her name. Okay, so you're going to have three versions of that memo, and they should be the same. But what if there's no memo in the Obama library, but Biden has one and Hillary has one? Or what if Hillary has one, but Biden and Obama don't have it? That's an exercise that somebody with the highest level of security better be doing already. Because I want to know, and the American people need to know, where are Barack Obama's, forget his birth certificate, we did bring it up, but not his birth certificate, his presidential records. Where are those records? What has been the process? Who has had access to those records? And in particular, the records at the highest classification level. Who has had them? Who provides security? In the case of Bill Clinton, this book that I've mentioned before, for the people in the FBI who need to have it 3 times before they do anything about it, relates a story of the Bush records, various Bush records, and then gets into the Clinton records, and discusses how, when the National Archives decided that they wanted to, store Bill Clinton's presidential records close to his library in Little Rock, or at the site of his library, they entered into a lease, a multi-year lease, with somebody who owned a former car dealership. Now, that doesn't sound like a skiff to me.
What's with car dealerships? Doesn't Fetterman also live in a car dealership?
I think he lives with Methuselah at Washington Square Park. I mean, the guy's Uncle Festerman. But anyway, the process, according to this book, which is pretty well done in my opinion, the high-level classified stuff doesn't go to the library. It stays in a skiff somewhere. Okay? You don't put that out in the library until it becomes unclassified, which, by operation of, I think, an executive order, the law and executive order, normally classified material is only classified for, I think, 10 or 12 years. That time frame. It's unusual to classify something for 60 years.
Unless it's got to do with JFK or 9/11.
Right. Or the Clinton Foundation.
Charles, how do you like Barack Obama wearing jeans with a suit jacket? You hate that.
It's just so silly. I bet she's wearing those stupid, sneakers with the white soles. And
we can't see those, but this is an incredibly rare photo of Barack Obama. And is this Susan Rice inside the skiff?
You're not supposed to take pictures inside the skiff either.
I guess that's why it's incredibly rare. This is Tyler Rogaway for The Drive, which I've not heard of before. Incredibly unique photo was snapped by White House photographer Peter Souza with President Obama and Susan Rice inside the skiff, talking about terror attacks in Brussels. This was when they were in Cuba, so they went to the Cuban, the U.S. embassy or whatever, and they have a skiff. This article tells us that the United States government is a network of these things around the world. I don't think I realized that. Interesting.
Sure, absolutely. But so going back here, so the first issue is the documents in different versions. The next issue, again, in the stipulated reality, everybody's focused on documents. Documents are not the only thing that, presidential records are, we've been through this many times. The statute defines them to include things other than paper and electronic records. It's books, it's photos, it's all sorts of things. And so they've got us focused on documents to distract us from I would guess, from the idea that there are other presidential records that he's also mishandled. I mean, this guy he's mishandled his entire life, Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Right? Why is it a shock to anybody that he would mishandle presidential materials? But I think what has happened now, and I said it a number of days ago, I think you did too, this story is out of control.
Yeah. By
design. Okay. And the handlers believe that Barack Obama's reputation as, the cool cucumber whose administration was, so tame and like a well-oiled machine, scandal-free, historic, fantastic.
Yeah, right.
Give me another book deal. They think that he can survive this, but Joe Biden has been thrown to the wolves at this point. The article that I think either I sent you or you sent me by Amy Parnes, I sent you, saying that that this is basically, people worry that this story will damage Biden's reelection campaign in the same way that the Clinton Foundation story damaged Hillary's chances. Right. This damage is done, and it's also actually it's whoever came up with this, and the timing of it is a master tactician, because not only Hillary, if you remember, they announced that she's going to be some professor at Columbia, attack a job that she is certainly not qualified to have, a real professor. She's a grifter. Going to be a professor of how to steal using a charity. Yeah. How to steal. How Kobe Bryant's wife got a ring. I got 2 mansions and $200 million. She's she's a piker compared to me, and I'm the chancellor of some university in Northern Ireland, and now I'm going to be a professor with all these, nubile kids, trying to hang around with me and more. I mean, it's ridiculous. So she makes that announcement, and people make fun of her, like me, and others made fun of her. But then this master tactician says, "Oh, I can top that." Penn Biden Center, Communist Chinese, national security. This guy's a moron, and in one fell swoop, you've gotten rid of Hillary. As Hillary would, by the time 2024 rolls around, 2025, I mean, she's going to be in the fossil club. And I just don't think she's a viable candidate. But now Joe is certainly not going to be able to run. There's no way he can credibly survive any kind of challenge in the Democratic primaries. And if he, by some miracle, made it through that gauntlet, he could not beat Donald Trump, I don't think, or Ron DeSantis. It's just impossible. Yeah. So Biden's finished. And I think that is becoming apparent to him or his handlers over the course of this weekend. And that will get rid of Ron Klain as chief of staff, who's Ron Klain really has no shame. He was the Ebola czar under Obama with no medical background. Okay, that's ridiculous. Why would you take that job? And then you're the chief of staff. I mean, Charles, you're the person who's
commentary from Ron Klain from 1 month ago that did not age well. White House chief of staff mocks Trump and says Biden is fulfilling promises the former president could not. Like really stealing information.
Right. I mean, have they made a bobblehead doll yet of Joe Biden?
I'm sure. They have them at those junk stores on Fifth Avenue. I've seen them.
Yeah. Well, they should make one of those talking fishes of him.
Yeah.
Where
Put
the
that
head
in
moves,
the White
mount him
House.
on the wall. Yeah, I'd buy one of them. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like more than one. Anyway, so this is Martin Luther King Day weekend. I mean, this is the weekend where Joe Biden's presidency, was finished, basically.
What do you think,
He's
Charles? Obviously, this is just pure guess, but I just get the impression that Joe Biden may just leave office early.
I think he's going to wait at least a week,
Yes, a week. Right.
right?
Like when you brought that to my attention and I looked at the date, I agree with your conclusion about that there is some big strategy being played right here. Doesn't mean it's definitely going to work. A lot of stuff these guys try doesn't work, but I see a lot of signs that, as you're describing here, this seems like a carefully orchestrated and timed plan.
Well, and you think about it practically. Hillary Clinton in 2007, she announced January 20th, 2007. And so people who are thinking about running in 2024 have been working on the project, without forming committees, sounding out their big donors, and they're getting ready to actually run, and they're going to have to start running soon. Second time she announced it in, I think, April of 2015. So she waited a bit. Why? Because the Clinton Foundation was a disaster, and she probably thought that she had it all boxed over and nobody would look at it. She made a mistake. That people did look at it and are looking at it.
And just quickly, coming back to this photo, I've only recently discovered this photo. This is George H.W. Bush being sworn in at the CIA with Gerald Ford standing behind him. And is it Earl Warren swearing him in? I'm not sure.
No, not Earl Warren. What could it be? Rehnquist?
I'm not sure. Let me just get rid of the ad blocker here. It's who was the here we got the.
I think it's
George H.W. Bush sworn in as director on January 30th, 1976, and the guy's wearing a black robe, so I don't know who it is exactly. But, Barbara Bush is smiling like crazy. The reason why I'm showing this photo is that George H.W. Bush, as I've said many times, I believe controlled the Ronald Reagan presidency. I believe he controlled the Gerald Ford presidency, and I believe he was a scheming CIA schmuck, much like Obama. And I think that this is a very meaningful photo in this moment, because I always, this picture speaks 1,000 words is such a important and, I guess, cliche phrase, but it's because look at this clumping. Everybody here on the left is together huddled around HW, and the guy who's the president, Gerald Ford, he's off to the right, on the side, isolated, totally in profile. He's of minimal importance in this photo, kind of similar to the way Jack Dorsey is of minimal importance in the photo of Adam Sharp and Barack Obama in the White House on the day of that White House Twitter town hall, which I think represents an inflection point where the U.S. government took over social media and used it as a tool of the intelligence community.
Well, and that brings me to a related point. When the founders, the people who adopted the various amendments, the first through 10, the Bill of Rights, in protecting freedom of speech, what they were trying to protect most was dissenting speech.
Right.
Everybody understands that orthodoxy doesn't need much protection. I mean, it's orthodoxy. People believe it, the powerful believe it. And what the founders understood so well through their study of history, and not just Western history, the whole of history, because these were educated people, unlike the current buffoons who pretend that they know history. They understood that orthodoxy gets tired and complacent and corrupt, as it did in Rome and Greece. And it's the people who are looking at it and saying, now hang on here, this orthodoxy is wrong. Orthodoxy, for example, Fauci's orthodoxy, dead wrong. And Robert Kennedy has this new lawsuit that's been announced, which is going to be very interesting to watch. Very brave of him. I don't like his politics, but I admire him for doing this. A very courageous thing to do. Thanks for doing it, and I hope it works. Similarly, I have the experience of everybody said GE's fantastic, GE's fantastic. Could you pay me some more money, GE? I'd like another this or that or something else. And I said, this is fraud. So I have an experience as a dissenter taking on a powerful institution that was wide endemic fraud at GE that they're still trying to cover. Okay.
Yeah.
And so this new era that we've been in, starting in 2009 and 10, the Facebook like button, the Twitter retweet button, these tools become very effective in shaping orthodoxy. Humans are horrible in the way they treat dissenters and lone wolves and people who are a threat to orthodoxy. They cancel them now today. They think that's funny, to take a Laura Loomer, take away her bank account, take away her this and that, just because she's, she can be annoying, but many times her points are quite good and quite quick, and you need to listen to these dissenters, and even if they're wrong 51% of the time, the other 49% can be quite valuable, especially if it's a big mistake you're making. So you should listen carefully to people who challenge orthodoxy, unless they're just standing like that guy who used to. I don't know if you ever saw him, Jason, but people who were longtime Manhattan residents would remember in the 90s, there used to be a guy who would stand around 45th or 6th Street.
Dressed as Jesus.
And start and scream at the sky for hours. That's not, you could protect that speech. You could ask them to do that somewhere else. But
that freedom of speech over there.
Yeah, but that's, he has the right to do that. It's annoying or whatever, but in the real world, if you're talking about serious issues, the national security of this country, you like to think that the leading people, the 52 people who signed that letter, was knowingly false, Trump being a threat to national security, whatever.
Right.
Each of those people needs to answer, how did you come to sign this letter? Who organized it? On what basis did you make these assertions? Allowing your name with the tenure of being head of one of our security agencies, how could you have been this wrong? And why were you really doing this? Were you fearful, perchance, that Donald Trump was going to expose your crimes? Is that why you did this? Because if that's the case, here's the suite of crimes we're going to charge you with. You'll have your defense, you go through a trial, etc. But understand you're going to be guilty. Right? Because you know that these are bad crimes. You have a chance now to plead, save us the expense of the trial, and go away for the rest of your life, allowing your family to have something. Or if you fight us, we're going to win and we're going to take everything. The family gets nothing. It's really that crime, the 52 of them getting together, they definitely interfered in the election. Definitely.
Yeah.
They swayed a lot of people, and the Twitter people and the Facebook people definitely interfered in the 2020 election for sure.
The letter from the 51 intelligence people, it's funny how difficult it is to get to right now. Here it is. One of the people who signed this letter, and I saw promoting it, was that guy, David Priest, who is a fellow at Brookings. There he is. And he wrote the book, How to Get Rid of a President.
Right.
In 2018. And he's a former analyst and manager of the Central Intelligence Agency and a good friend of deceased scumbag George H.W. Bush. So, I've long said that Brookings Institution seems to be a crucible for devising methods of getting rid of presidents, whether it's Nixon and Watergate, Trump and Russia, whatever. It seems like that's what they do.
Well, and remember that Strobe Talbot, one of Bill Clinton's close friends. Right. Yeah, and so going back to the CIA, obviously, one would hope that people who have major influence in shaping the way this country is run would want the population to be educated, meaning not, like Hunter Biden going through Yale Law School, actually learning from the mistakes in the past, actually being functional, being able to write using English and not some unknown language to get your Princeton thesis. To pick on Michelle again, and yes, I went there. You would want people to really understand how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, et cetera, basic skills. And this government is a participatory government. We don't say that that there's a group over here that is going to be read into what's really going on, and everybody else is going to be watching football and basketball and baseball and drama, whatever, and think that their vote matters when it really doesn't. That's not the way this is supposed to work. And people who go down that track and believe that track and implement that track need to be caught out, exposed, again, subjected to whatever legal process is appropriate, civil, criminal, or both, and be made an example of. And so it would be one thing if the CIA and the deep state apparatus could point to a large number of successes. Maybe you'd enter into devil's bargain and say, okay, maybe I don't want to know what you actually did and how you organized whatever you did, this success over here and that success over here. Where are the successes? We have in Iraq a country that, nobody asked this really tough questions of, we've got Saddam Hussein in there, who we put in there, okay, who is definitely a nasty character, but when you get rid of him, who fills the power vacuum? Nobody thought that one through. Jake Sullivan talked about, on Afghanistan, that he's thought through every scenario. Okay, Jake, show me the work you did where now we have the mess that we have in what's left of Afghanistan, what I call Afghanistan. You just go down the list. Libya, open air slave trading, gigantic market for slaves today in Benghazi, in Libya. Okay, how did that figure into the CIA's plans? Europe, a mess. Climate change, a mess. You go, the World Economic Forum. Okay, why does that thing exist? And it starts tomorrow.
Oh, right.
Now, here's the people in Davos, I don't think are going to have, what kind of insect do you want with your vodka martini? I think it's going to be caviar and whatever. Try to get us to eat insects, live in these crime-ridden cities. You have to get permission of Klaus Schwab to drive your car more than 15 miles. I mean, these are crazy people. And it's certainly not a charity, the World Economic Forum. It's a self-enrichment, power aggrandizement scheme for the son of a Nazi, Klaus Schwab.
Yeah.
Why would you want to be associated with that person? Ted Malloch has written the definitive book on him. From the inside, our friend Ted Malloch was the executive director, I think, or a senior person inside the World Economic Forum until he found out the truth about Schwab and said, this guy is horrible. I'm out of here and I'm going to write a book about it. And he did.
Charles, back on Strobe Talbott for just a moment. Did you know that he stepped down from Brookings Institution in January 31st, 2017?
I did not. I think he's reasonably old at this point.
Right.
Quite. And I think didn't he lose his wife or his sister? Or there's some
I don't know, but definitely Hillary Clinton lost the election. President of Brookings, Talbott launched Brookings 2.0, a strategic vision for the institution for the decades ahead. He also oversaw Brookings' Second Century campaign. What is Brookings 2.0, I wonder? We click on that, and it tells us Brookings 2.0, a plan for our second century. Because it was 100 years old. So they've been, messing with presidential elections for 100 years. I briefly got into the history of this thing. It's just swamp.
No kidding. No kidding.
Governance. They love governance. I mean, these are self-appointed things that think they can tell the government what to do. They're staffed up with former intelligence scumbags. Here's Paul Ryan, speaking of scumbags. And it's just nothing but this is the deep state. This is the bureaucratic, afterlife of losers who want to keep doing things like, planting documents on people and launching raids at golf clubs. And this is a troublemaking thing that we really, Charles, I know this is something I learned from you, but the number one problem, I think, we need more scrutiny over these tax-exempt organizations because there's just so many examples of them being abused, particularly, I'm not talking about like guide dogs for the blind and stuff like that, but these sort of government-affiliated things seem to be nothing but grift factories.
Well, especially those that are you could have like a series of red flags. Start with the ones that are nominally headquartered in Washington, D.C. and Manhattan.
Yeah.
Okay? And Chicago and San Francisco and Los Angeles, places with very high state and local income tax rates.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then, look at those that are furthering by their name or title the interests of dynastic political families. Then look at those that are funded by monopolists, Gates, Rockefeller, Henry Ford. Go down a list of, current and past and future monopolists. And you're going to have a list of, you're going to have a pile of maybe trillions of dollars of assets when you add them all up. Now, you don't need to write new laws. The laws are there.
Yeah.
And Tom Fitton is going back, apparently, into Lois Lerner and what she may have been doing to target Tea Party conservatives and to corruptly run this important branch of the IRS that deals with tax exempts. You go in there and it'd be very simple. I know that I could do it. I would be happy to advise, so a team of people do it, but it wouldn't take more than a month to put like 8 people working together to put together the priority targets of the charities that are the most egregious examples of charity fraud and corruption. And the penalty on the books, the way I read it, is if you use a private foundation, the Gates Foundation, for private gain, or more than an insubstantial amount of private gain, if you route a donation from a private foundation to a charity that doesn't exist, like the Clinton Foundation, one time, you pay a penalty. Twice, there is an argument that you could shut the whole thing down and say this wasn't a charity, never was a charity. You assess personal income taxes on the donors. You treat it as a corporation or whatever it's going to be. It needs to pay taxes. You then re-examine
right?
Excise taxes and penalties and prison terms and stuff like that. And you start with the big fish. And once you make an example of Gates, you're going to have a long line of people come and say, please, not me. And you're going to say, well, okay, here's the program. Okay, if we don't have to put you through a trial, we're still going to shut you down. Okay, and this money's going to go to reduce the debt, federal debt that you've piled on us. And you're never going to be able to hold a position of trust at all, of any kind. You can't be a corporate director. You can't run an investment firm. You can't go on a charity. You can go, and if you wanted to save the world and write a long thesis about how globalism should be, that people should have to eat insects, go do it. But you're not going to raise money for that project. You're just going to be writing.
Look at this headline, Charles. Business Insider tells us earlier today, Bill Gates says being rich can easily make you out of touch, but he wouldn't ban others from becoming billionaires. What is he? He's in charge of deciding who gets to be a billionaire?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of like Fauci. We've got a pandemic coming, and I might have started it, maybe my scientists or whatever, but you can go on Grindr dates. I'm a medical expert. I follow the science. It's obvious. Go on Grindr dates in the middle of a pandemic. And I'm going to tell that's so sensible that you ought to let me run your life because I'm so smart and I follow the science. The guy's a moron.
Yeah, he says rich should pay more taxes, but not him. He's got it all in the foundation.
Never mind, yeah. But, it's like there are various shows. There's that show, I think it's called Impractical Jokers. It's very funny, actually.
Is that like crank calls?
No, the 4 guys that go out to like Union Square and they do different things. And, those guys in character have far more common sense than Bill Gates and Fauci and these people who we all want to put up on a pedestal. Or there's that other show, I think it's called Ridiculousness or something. That's what we're living in.
Yeah.
The notion that this idiot Biden. I mean, think of the things that he has said. If you don't vote for me, you're not black, he says to one of the most top popular black Charlemagne the God.
Right. Podcast
tells him,
hosts.
yeah, if you don't like what I'm saying in my record, you're not black.
If Trump said that to him, don't you think he would have just yelled at him right there on the spot on the podcast and kicked him off or something dramatic? He just sat there and took it from Joe Biden. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, but I mean, but the point is the mainstream media took it.
Yeah.
It was cool. I mean, I started to talk about the campaign minutes back, or almost an hour back. You know, if you go back to the primary in April 2019, he was a credible candidate, but there's no, swarm of support. Asshole pothole wins Iowa, and in the first debate, Kamala Harris smoked Biden. There was talk that Biden would, have to leave the campaign, and then the fish fry corrupt guy. James Kleinberg, who was South Carolina fish fry, is just like the Clinton Global Initiative. The raccoon dinner in Gillette, Arkansas, same idea. Go eat this horrific fried fish, put a lot of tartar sauce on it, and if you slip a box of cash to me, you'll be on my right side, and I'll make you president of the United States, which is basically what he did. In one fell swoop. Biden went from being a stammering fool to just sweeping Super Tuesday. How did that happen? How much crooked money was in that? How much social media manipulation occurred then? Okay, where are the FBI files on that? Or the Twitter files on that?
Oh, Charles, the Gillette Coon weekend is happening right now.
Really?
Well, it says I didn't get my invitation. That's too bad.
I knew I was supposed to be somewhere else.
Yeah. The Encyclopedia of Arkansas tells us that in Arkansas, one of the most acknowledged, anticipated, and attended wild game dinners is the annual Gillette Coon Supper held on the second weekend of January. Now, with them changing the names of universities and tearing down that guy from Princeton and everything, isn't it racist to call this a coon supper? Marion Barry. Marion Barry of Gillette. Yeah, I see. I'm very confused by this event.
Marion Barry is still dead, isn't he?
But this is Berry, like the fruit. So it's somebody else.
What's the first name?
Robert Marion Berry. The bitch set him up.
I was in D.C. I spent the night in D.C. that night. When the bitch set him up. I was there.
I love it that's his hilarious defense. That's the defense.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, you can go.
Probably Joe Biden, provided him informal legal advice.
But then he got reelected as mayor. They were like, crack. Yeah, it's fine. Elect him.
Right. Well, Washington, D.C. should not be the capital of the United States, period.
No.
Just shouldn't.
Now, Charles, I'm just sensitive to the time because I know you have an appointment later today that you had mentioned to me. Are we all right?
How long have we been into this?
We are at an hour 43 right now.
Yeah, we can wrap it up in the next 5. It'd be good.
Well, it's up to you, whatever you'd like to discuss further. But unfortunately, we're going to miss this raccoon dinner.
Yeah, I gotta fire up the private jet. Go back for dessert.
I would be interested to taste raccoon. I have a policy that I'm sure you would hate, and it's born out of working on a lot of weird shows where people hunted all kinds of weird stuff. But anything that other people eat and don't die from, I would try it at least once. Not necessarily going to have it all the time, but I've eaten some pretty bizarre stuff, deer heart and alligator and rattlesnake and stuff like that. But this is, I think it's today. Oh, no, yesterday. Berry pre-coon supper reception. Oh, no, so it's today. If this is, this is from 2 weeks ago. The 11th annual pre-coon. What the hell is a pre-coon supper?
Well, if they could get away with a scam for the dinner, they'd probably say there are probably people dumb enough to go to 2 of these. So we'll do 2
exactly.
but on the Goodman eating adventure plan, that's over here, right?
Yeah.
The Ortel plan is not even in the frame. It's over
Right.
entirely the opposite of that. I would
Don't
not
even
go
come
to
at
this.
me with a grilled cheese sandwich with Swiss on there. That's like nonsense.
No, 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 no. It's got holes in it.
Yeah.
Why? I'm not going to do it. It's
There's no
crazy.
cheese.
It's supposed to be orange.
Yeah.
Anyway, orange cheese, good. But anyway, I do think this is a historic weekend. I think
Yeah.
that we will, if America were run properly, Biden would graciously bow out.
Right.
And I don't think that decision will be made until after the 21st.
I agree.
But he does not have. He will not win in 2024. That's for sure. So
Yeah. They can't hide this
so
one.
that's historic. It's historic because this Davos mess is happening. We'll see what Putin decides to do this week in Ukraine. And I think it's also historic in that so far the market has been up, the stock market, but there's some really substantial headwinds and high interest rates and whether inflation's actually been brought down, and I don't think it has. And then the credibility deficit. You can't, this guy is not going to win back the points that he's hemorrhaged in the last several days. There's no way. His performance, when you give him, if you take Shaquille O'Neal and you put Biden on top of him, and you give him a small basketball, not a normal one, and you ask him to hold the basketball and drop it through the net, he couldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's my view.
He's just a disaster. I just don't understand anybody who can't see that by now. I think there's something wrong with them at this point, but
Absolutely. Well, anyway, let's hope everyone stays safe and that I guess we're 2 months away roughly from the beginning of spring. So we've got 2 long weeks of winter. We got CPAC.
oh yeah.
Happening.
What about Matt Schlapp? What's happening with him?
He's got to stop touching other people's schlaps. I think.
Let's see. Culture of protecting predators. That's the Daily Beast. I actually saw something that said that, speaking of touching people's genitals, Barry Diller is looking to sell the Daily Beast. Oh, and here we have a new text bolsters the claims of, genital schlappage. New text message bolsters sexual assault claims against CPAC head Matt Schlapp. This is saying, this is a guy who was working for Herschel Walker. Oh yeah, look, here it is. He's pissed I didn't follow, so here's the text messages. He's pissed I didn't follow him to his hotel room, the staffer wrote to a friend who's also in politics after the alleged encounter. Text messages shared with CNN. Huh. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, look, I think no one wishes this tragedy upon the Schlapp kids.
No.
This is really, the people, Jessica Tarloff, who says that, asshole pothole was right to stay at home because his kid's on a ventilator. Okay, I get that. But Schlapp must resign immediately from the American Conservative Union, immediately, and the foundation. This political consulting firm must stop. And there must be a serious investigation of the American Conservative Union and the foundation, because this is just one incident. There's probably a pattern and practice of this going back a long time. There may be other people like this. There likely are around Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. And this is horrible behavior.
Yeah.
And, you can get up there and do the Jimmy Swagger, yes, I have sinned, fine.
No one's buying
But that's
that.
not, yes, no one, you're done. That house, the fancy mansion that you have, you're going to sell that.
People should remember that this is the jackass who is behind the organization that threw me out for no reason after a pretty lengthy drive to go to CPAC. And I'm not angry at him because he threw me out. That just raised a red flag as to why would they do that. I think it's because they know that I'm associated with you and that you are possibly maybe one of the nation's top experts in identifying charity fraud, which it seems like they might be involved in, and they were like, don't let that guy in here. We don't want him seeing or finding anything or photographing. I hope I'm building a reputation, Charles, among scumbags like this to not let me into their events because they're going to get investigated.
Yeah, I think you're going to get investigated more when this happens. I mean,
Exactly.
I was, in the case of the American Conservative Union, I had my suspicions about it, right? But before you had the tragic event happen to you, I just let it alone because well, I don't know. I'd be pissed, but annoying. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, you did drive a number of miles. It wasn't like you got it.
Waste
right?
of time and money for sure.
Right. And but that happened, and I thought, well, why don't I take a look at this? And while it's small in terms of financial dimensions, we're not talking about even 100 million U.S., which is large but small compared to the Clinton Foundation. It is. That entity is very powerful for the moment. If you want to be the Republican candidate for president, you better win the straw poll.
Right.
And if you want to win the mainstream elections, sometimes you'll back down a bit in the presidential year because CPAC can have some fiery, hard right people in it. You gotta get moderates and independents to win the general. But as a matter of extreme urgency. You're innocent until proven guilty, and maybe this is Jussie Smollett bullshit on the part of the staffer. We've got to make sure that this is credible.
An allegation. We don't know if it's true.
Right.
It is interesting, though. I'm here on the foundation website looking for, their articles of incorporation and bylaws and all that stuff it's probably here. I mean, they have to post it, but obviously donate and internships. They're a lot more interested in that. They should. No results found. They want the interns to don't wear anything too tight.
Yeah, and it's sad that so many people here. It's not just schlep, right? I mean, you have Bob Bauman. I think he's dead now. He's one of the founders of this thing.
Oh, right.
Right. There's quite a few. Anyway, I think they need to clean up their act. Maybe the only way through this is to shut it down and start over again. Call it I mean, you remember schlep is now schlepping around the world, setting up these conservative union CPACs, all over the world.
I can't find this data, Charles. They seem to be not so eager to post it here.
You don't have to post it on your website, but we do, or we got it through the
ProPublica.
No, we got it through the states. Virginia and
Secretary of State, right? Yeah, we've looked at it before. It's got some interesting, potentially problematic things going on. And then wasn't there a $33,000 or several $33,000 contributions from somebody else we know?
Tom
Fitton, yes.
Right, and this whole idea that you have with CPAC. I mean, there needs to be kind of like the Penn Biden Center. If you're going to have an event, CPAC. There needs to be a full accounting for that event. How much money went into that event? What were the expenses of that event? To the extent that the expenses are allocated to that event, how did they arise in the first place? What percent of the expenses went to this event, and is it fair? And then what benefits do you get or do you confer by holding this event?
Right.
And as Steve Bannon was pointing out to Matt Gaetz, who had one of the prime speaking slots at one of these CPACs recently, they were both joking on air, which probably was not a great idea to do because you can get that tape now, about how valuable the prime speaking slot is to a political aspirant. It's very valuable. I would argue it's a campaign contribution.
Yeah. Look at this. Media Matters, speaking of people schlapping genitals, they're saying while guest hosting Steve Bannon's podcast, Rep. Matt Gaetz defends George Santos' false claims. Embellishing one's resume isn't a crime. That wasn't the smartest thing to say.
No, Matt. Sorry about that. I mean, not just because he lied about going to Horace Mann, which I think is bad. This is an obvious. Well, no, this isn't just one fraud. This is a life built embracing fraud. Every aspect of this guy's life, a critical aspect, is a lie, a bold lie. And he's gotten into Congress. He's not going to stop there.
Right.
next thing you know, he'll emigrate to, some African country and claim he's an emperor or something. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Reparations.
Yeah, and he wants reparations, exactly. Or he'll set up a charity and be a fake Native American, like that woman who turned out to be not a Native American.
Well, they're also saying that now there's some videos emerged where he's George somebody, and then now our question. I mean, I don't see this guy surviving. They're on the story, so you can tell, right? Because when they're on the story from the beginning and not letting it go for days and days, particularly whoever heard of this guy before, versus anything with Joe Biden where they're like, don't talk about that.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's a lot of food for thought, and we'll watch with keen interest what's going on. But as you mentioned, I do have to go.
Yeah. Well, Charles, thank you for the time and excellent insights today. I want to remind people that they can support Crowdsource the Truth by becoming sponsors on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. I really like it when people sponsor on Odyssey, Charles, because it's a totally independent platform, kind of like Crowdsource the Truth itself. And there are certain people who really hate this platform and are trying to destroy it, which makes me think that it is a strategically valuable platform for those of us who want to preserve the First Amendment. And people can now access sponsor-exclusive content on there, just like on Patreon and Subscribestar. So it's a great way to support the show and get access to all of your favorite Crowdsource the Truth episodes. I've also been putting a lot of legacy content on here, so people who want to go back into the archives and look at some of the work we've done in the past, this is one of the best resources for that. It has an excellent search engine, so you can find videos that have been scrubbed from the internet by the vile enemies of the U.S. Constitution. Charles, I hope you have a great day for the remainder of the day, and everybody else, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Have a great evening.